it's a big deal for the organization, and I want to talk about the three players that we're receiving because we're excited about each of them. But I think given our relationship with Elvis and the time he's been in the organization, all the great moments that he's been part of for us and our fan base, I want to talk about Elvis a little bit first. This is a deal we've been working on for really in earnest for over a week. It came up earlier in the winter, but it really picked up about a week ago. And so I was glad, given the sensitivity of things, that it didn't get out. And I was at my son's baseball practice this morning, and one of his friends totally randomly was telling me about 14-year-old boys telling me about how much Elvis was his favorite player and how much he loves watching him. And I'm sitting there biting my lip thinking, like, well, I got some news for you. But it was a reminder of how popular Elvis is, and for all very positive reasons. He's been one of our most exciting and consistent players here, really on our best teams. I think the energy and enthusiasm that his love to play that he brings to the park every single day really stood out. For me, I've known him since he was 15 years old, but it always the one that really stands out to me was him singling off Phil Hughes in Game 2 of the ALCS and taking second on a wild pitch, stealing third and stealing home after we lost Game 1, and just how that energized the park and the team and the comeback and his place in Rangers history. That being one of my personal big memories. I think the big thing with Elvis, though, is it became a lot more than that, right? He moved full time into the DFW area. He's raising his family here, and he answered the bell every time, whether that was John and you guys with the media, or our community relations, or charitable needs, anything the organization needed, and especially anything that had to do with kids. He really stood out, and I think that's why he's so beloved around the community. I think in time, John may not be happy with me saying this, as I don't vote for it, but I think he'll probably end up in the Rangers Hall of Fame. I mean, he's meant that much to the organization. I think what this deal is about for us, and it dovetails into why Elvis, I think, agreed to the deal, is that, this deal is about us building and preparing for the next great Rangers team, right? Elvis has been part of the prior great Rangers club, and from a career standpoint for him, set aside the personal side of making a move at this point in his career, but from a career standpoint, this is a great opportunity for him, and one that we're glad that he's going to get an opportunity to go into a team that finished in first place and getting a chance to play shortstop on a regular basis, an opportunity that we were no longer prepared to offer because of the decisions we've made and wanting to give Isaiah Kiner-Falefa that opportunity that he's earned. And also over the course of time here, take a look at some other young players at third base and on the infield. So, that in part, this deal opens up that opportunity for these guys. And then we also get three players back that we're very excited about. Khris Davis, we know well, like a lot of guys, he had a down year last year in the shortened pandemic season. We think he's got the opportunity to bounce back and will come in and compete for at-bats with several other players with us. And then we get two young players in Jonah Heim, a switch-hitting catcher with a great approach that doesn't strike out, draws walks. And we think, like a lot of young catchers, has a chance to develop into a little more power as he matures. But he's a excellent defensive player. Pitchers love throwing to him, plus framer, plus thrower. And looking forward to seeing him develop. And then Dane Acker, a guy that with some local ties that we've liked at San Jack, we liked at Rice, we liked it at Oklahoma last year, had on our draft board. A guy that can really command all of his pitches already, and we started to see in Instruction League his stuff take a tick up, like a lot of guys will tend to do as they put on strength and mature. So looking forward to developing him as a starting pitcher, and all those factors kind of tie together into why we feel that this deal makes sense for us.
If Khris has something he wants to say, and then Chris Woodward has something he wants to say, and then we'll take questions. Please raise your hand with the little yellow hand if you want to ask a question. So I'll turn it over to Woody for a minute.
Yeah, John, you got to say Woody when CY and I are on the same call. People are going to get confused. But JD obviously has been around Elvis, since he was 15, like you said, and as a player and then as a coach and now as a manager, I've had a chance to watch his career kind of, take shape. And the thing that kind of stands out for me is just the enthusiasm that this guy brings every day. It's going to be missed, and I think a lot of Ranger fans, obviously, that's why he was a fan favorite. That's a lot of it. He was stable in the infield. He was a very consistent shortstop, and those are things that are really hard to find in players. And I can't say enough about just what he's done, not only on the field, but JD alluded to it, off the field. I think he's immersed himself in the community. He's done a ton of things, and too many things to explain, obviously, on this call. But I don't know who votes for the Hall of Fame, Rangers Hall of Fame, but I'm guessing he's going to get a lot of votes. My conversations with him, the one thing I do respect about him is, I've had difficult conversations, especially the last year. But he's always been respectful. Never, obviously wanted the honest opinion, from me. I tried to give that as much as I could, but, just the respect factor that he obviously gave the organization. And I think this is honestly the best thing that could happen for him as well, just because he's going to get the opportunity to do the thing that he knows he can still do, and that's play shortstop on a daily basis. So I'm excited for him. I'm happy for the opportunity. I feel like, in all the conversations, I felt like he was ready to have a good year. I'm a little worried that some of that might be against us now. But I obviously wish him the best. And like I said, he's had a heck of a career, and one that will go among the greats in Texas for sure.
Okay, so we're going to open it to questions. Again, raise your hand. I'm going to have to see them here. Let's start with Emily.
This is for JD and for Woody. So, being such an identifiable face within this franchise for so long, as you continue this kind of rebuilding process, what kind of challenges do you face in, kind of creating a new identity? Because it's almost like that's the last of those teams where it's, if you were holding on to anything, it's that was the last thing, right?
Woody, I'll just say something quick, and I'll turn it over to you. Emily, I think that's a great point. For me, that's really one of the most exciting parts about this, because as great as those teams were, it was a decade ago, right? And so we've, obviously we've moved past that, and I'm excited to see these guys compete and form their own identity as a club. I think this allows them to, them being, the players here and then the group coming right behind them, it allows them in some ways kind of a free, runway ahead of them to demonstrate who they are and the style of play that we want and that Woody and the staff is going to push. I think it really allows them a little bit of freedom, right? Not that Elvis was holding them back necessarily, but it's just the nature of life, right? When you have an opportunity in front of you and somebody's going to step up and seize it. And so that for me is an exciting piece of this, to see where that goes and who steps up and how.
Yeah, and I'll kind of add to that, and I think that you nail on the head right there, JD. It's not that, it's kind of like when you're kids, you let them go and they either have to move on, and it's like this group of players, the collective group is a very strong, core group that, we feel like can take everything that Elvis and the guys, that were here, all those guys kind of taught them, and they can kind of take the reins now. So we're obviously, there's a lot of guidance that's going to need to occur from here on. We got a lot of young players, but I do believe that, it's a tremendous group of players that they all kind of have a similar belief in their own way, but, they believe in the core of what this group is about. And, like I said, it's about the style of play, the work, the preparation, everything that we've been preaching. And, it's time to let these guys kind of have the freedom and to fly on their own. Elvis provided a ton of guidance and leadership over the years, especially in the last couple of years while I've been here. So forever grateful for that. But now it's time to kind of let this team kind of form its own personality.
Thanks, you guys.
Jeff.
JD, at what point did you present Elvis with trade, and because he had to waive his rights, or he had to approve the trade. So at what point did he get this handed to him?
Called him on Thursday night, probably about 6:30, 7 o'clock on Thursday. I texted him earlier, and we connected live. We spoke, and just kind of laid it out for him. And by yesterday afternoon, things were lining up pretty well. So I think he took it for very much what it is, right? Which is it's a major change for him and his family, and young family, and obviously his parents live here, or his mom and Gruber live here, and his brothers with them, and they're expecting, and so that part I'm sure had to. There's a lot that went into that decision for them from a family standpoint, but from a career standpoint, I think he understood it right away, right? Which was, we've made decisions based on our plan, and Elvis, this is an opportunity for him to play shortstop, which is what he has done his whole career, and is very confident in his abilities to do that for a very good club. So I think he just had to kind of reconcile those two things, and but within 24 hours it was pretty clear. He understood it and saw it for what it was, and after that it was really just kind of a paperwork deal.
Okay, Woodrow, what? How are you going to get Khris Davis at bats? Seems like there's some logjam issues there at DH left field. What are your thoughts early on here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of goes with the competition factor that's going to be in camp is going to be pretty evident when guys show up that they're going to have to fight for their best. They're going to have to earn them. I talked to Willie not too long ago about the same thing. Willie's in a little different boat. I feel like I'd really challenge him to play left field and become more of a complete player. I did actually ask Khris Davis if how comfortable he was at first base, to see if that potentially was an option at times. He said he would work at it and wasn't against it. So it's I think these solutions present the answers present themselves through spring training, and we'll get these guys at bats. We'll see where they're at, and they'll have to earn it.
Does this now leave Odor as the leader in the clubhouse at third base?
I have to see it. I haven't seen him obviously take a ground ball at third base, so it definitely opened the door for him for sure. Because part of me was basically based on what Elvis had been telling me, and his openness to doing it. I felt like he was going to come in pretty prepared to take that job. So yeah, I mean, we don't really have anybody there penciled in, so I expect Rudy to come in and fight for it.
All right, thanks.
Go to Levi, and again, if you have a question, please raise your hand. Levi?
Well, I had this question queued up before Khris just answered about playing time, so I hope this isn't awkward, but I couldn't help but be reminded of a trade that you guys made a couple years ago for when you got Barr, and Austin Jackson was the big name, but he was pretty immediately. I think you guys told him to not even report. Am I barking up the wrong tree thinking that this feels like a similar situation with Khris Davis?
Well, the similarities, I think, Levi, are that there's a financial component and a young talent component that are clearly tied together, right? Our willingness to send the cash that is being included was in part because of our excitement in adding Heim and Acker for the longer term. But we think Khris Davis has something to offer our club. We believe that last year's results for a lot of players, like I mentioned earlier, were not really indicative of their true abilities. And so, he's going to get a chance to come in, like what he was just saying, and compete. This isn't a situation like where Austin Jackson, where we didn't have him report. He'll be in camp with us. Look forward to seeing what he's got. From there, to Woody's point, performance and the competition will dictate, a lot of things. Will dictate our roster, and will dictate the playing time within it. But he's definitely coming to camp, and we think he's got more to offer.
And then for Khris, Woodward, if you have to juggle this lineup a little bit and try to get Khris Davis and Willie Calhoun both in, is there any consideration that David Dahl might slide to center field, or even Joey Gallo might slide to center field?
I think David Dahl would be more likely than Joey Gallo. I don't really want to put Joey in center anymore. But listen, I mean, there's options. We have versatility in some spots like that. Like I said, things will typically take care of themselves if they're both hitting really well and both performing. Khris Davis is performing at a level that he did in the past. He's going to find himself in the lineup. The same thing with Willie. So, we have 9 spots in the lineup that, we're going to try to get in there. It may be difficult at times, but like I said, guys if they're performing, they'll find a way in there.
Yeah. And then the last thing for me, as far as Jonah Heim goes, do you guys, we're still a couple weeks from spring training even starting, so I'm sure this is too early, but do you guys envision him being up there with Jose Trevino in the, as the season starts? Are you kind of looking at him as your backup catcher?
Go ahead, Woody. Sorry.
Yeah, we expect him to come in and compete for that. Absolutely. I think we definitely hold him in high regard, and we got to see him a little bit last year. He's the same. I have to keep repeating it, but he's got to come in and earn that. I fully expect him to come in with that mentality to come in and compete for that spot. Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Okay, let's go to Evan. And again, if you have a question, raise your hand. Evan.
JD had a couple of mechanical questions here. The financial considerations are not insignificant. Does that get paid out in one lump sum, or does it get paid out over a certain number of years?
It partially paid this year and partially paid in 22.
Are those equal sums?
No, not equal sums.
Okay. The second part is there seemed to be some discrepancy on stuff that I had seen online, whether or not a trade triggered a option, a player option in Elvis's contract. Can you clear that up?
Yeah, Elvis has a vesting option for 2023 based on playing time in 21 and 22. And the only thing that really changes with that is that if it vests, it becomes a player option. So if if Elvis is the regular shortstop for Oakland in 21 and 22 and he triggers the vesting option, it's his choice once he's traded whether or not he wants to remain under that contract for 2023, I guess. Whereas if he'd stayed here, then it would have just been a vesting option. It wouldn't have been a choice for him to make. Okay.
He still has to vest it in Oakland in order for it to be a player option at that point.
Correct.
The other element is where those financial considerations are concerned. That's going to be a big part of this club's future. I think this club has a future, or looks at the future and envisions itself being able to once again be significant players on the free agent market. How is what you end up saving in 22 going to come into play in your mind?
I'll let you know about 12 months from now.
But do you anticipate it?
Well, there is there's a portion of Elvis's contract that we're going to cover for next year, but there's a portion that Oakland is going to remain is going to cover themselves. So relative to the obligation that we had previously, we've saved money is kind of the wrong way to put it, because it was an obligation. We just have less of an obligation than we did prior to the deal.
Okay, I'll let somebody else ramble on. Thank you.
Jared.
JD or CY, I was just wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about Dane Acker, share a little bit about what you've seen in him and why he was a desirable acquisition.
Yeah, Jared, he's a guy that the Rangers had on the draft board last year in the draft. He didn't quite make it, I think, to the round which they were interested, but somebody that, as JD referenced, is a local kid from Texas, pitched at Rice, then Sanjak, then Oklahoma. Somebody who's got pretty good stuff. Profiles a starting pitcher, clean, easy delivery, good fastball, good curveball, okay changeup at this point, and somebody we think can take another leap as we get him in the organization and kind of identify his strengths and kind of build on those. So certainly building starting pitching throughout the minor league system, continuing to stockpile depth and see kind of how these guys develop and mature. We're excited about him. We're hopeful that he can take more steps to becoming a big league pitcher and eventually help us out at the big league level.
Awesome. That's all for me. Thanks, guys.
Okay, we'll go back to Jeff.
Khris Young, you came on board when this was, it looked like the plan was in place and moves were happening quickly. Is this what you envisioned? I mean, it seems like there is a plan for this team and that it's being followed very well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, Jeff, in complete fairness, you're right. This is something that JD and the current regime had kind of put in place, not specific to this trade, but just the vision of the franchise and where we're going and what we need to do to get there. We had a lot of conversations in the hiring process that kind of discussed it. And, JD and I were 100% on board with the direction we're going. I think these moves all reflect that. And it's pretty exciting. I know it's somewhat of a bittersweet day seeing an icon go for the franchise. But I think in terms of the future of where we're headed, I think it's really, really exciting. And I think that this is something that positions us to make improvements as we continue to try to achieve our goal of winning a championship.
And then when you pitched against the Rangers and Elvis, what were your thoughts? What was your scouting report on him? Keep him off the bases?
Yeah, keep him off the bases. Don't make a mistake to him. I mean, Elvis was in a very good lineup too. So you top to bottom, you had your work cut out for you. But I specifically remember one game. I think I was pitching for Seattle, and Elvis hit a home run off me on a hanging breaking ball, and I vividly remember. I think it was a hot afternoon game in Globe Life. So he's just a tremendous player, tremendous person. I don't know Elvis well, but have an unbelievable amount of respect for him and what he's meant to the Texas Rangers franchise, to the fans, to the community. And certainly, I think there's a quote from Ray that I saw that he'll always be a part of the Ranger family. And, we wish him well. We certainly are going to have our work cut out competing against him. But he is always going to be a Texas Ranger.
All right. Thank you.
Evan Grant.
John, go back. I want to go back to something that somebody asked about third base. Could you see yourself still adding a third base option before camp?
Yeah, but I think it's likely. I think it's likely that we will add some. In what capacity? Whether it's a part-time or full-time, or if it's a major league deal or more of a competition, that remains to be seen.
And the other. I think that's it for now. Thanks.
We'll go back to Jeff, and then we'll take a couple more if there's anything.
So with the minor league season kind of in flux and not really sure when like Double A and lower might start, how does that impact Josh Young? Speaking of third base, John Daniels. And his dog.
A dog. Listen, there's still, as you guys know, a lot we don't know about this. Right? It's not my dog, by the way. There's still a lot that we don't know about the season. What we do know is that we've got big league camp starting here in about 10 days or so, and Josh will be there along with a number of our other young players that we're excited about. So looking forward to kind of being able to evaluate him in that setting, both evaluate him and see, let him continue to develop in that setting, play against, big league pitching, big league caliber opposition in camp. Exactly how it plays out from there, whether, Josh stays in Arizona, whether he, goes to the alternate site, whether AAA start, AA, AAA start, relatively soon. I don't have those answers yet, but we would like to give Josh and a lot of our young players, not just him, a chance to develop and play in a traditional minor league setting. That's our hope, that we will be able to do that early in the season and be able to evaluate if he and they are as far along on a few cases as we think they might be. He was very, very impressive in instructional league, which was not surprising based on his aptitude and intelligence and work ethic and talent. But while he's going to be competing in some regards for a spot in spring training, our preference, at least right now, he hasn't played above A ball. So our preference would be that he gets additional development time until we know what that looks like. It's hard to say exactly where that'll be.
All right. Thank you. Sorry about my dog.
Anything else before we let these guys go? Anybody have another question? I see no hands. Oh, I have another hand there from Evan Grant. But he's muted.
Unmute me.
You're unmuted.
I specifically did that just to annoy John Blake. But JD, I think to Jeff's point, this trade doesn't change your perspective on Josh's ability to whether it would be to open the season with this team or not. I mean, it has no impact on Josh one way or another.
Probably. I mean, it does not necessarily change how we're viewing him for, April 1st. No. Could it as a domino effect, create some additional opportunity for him during the season? Sure, that's a possibility. But it doesn't change our feelings right now. We are very, very high on him. We're also aware that he has not played above A ball, and we'd like to give him that opportunity to get his feet wet before we move forward there.
Great. Okay, that clears that up.
Okay, anything else before we let him go? I think we're all good. So thanks, guys, for jumping on. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.